sort of look like neurons and neural networks in the brain, don't they? Like fractal patterns, branching and ever branching, splitting and splitting and splitting into smaller and smaller parts. Recently, the scientists, were looking at the clusters of galaxies in the network throughout the universe. It resembles like a net with high matter concentrations being knots along the net kind of thing, where galaxy groups tend to cluster. I think some people are also assuming that those are the areas where dark matter collects more. In any case, this ridiculously huge network resembles nothing other than a neural network in the brain. It really does look like a neural network. In fact, it's frighteningly similar, they said. So, having talked about these patterns before, and those ones, repetitions of the same pattern over and over again, brings me onto consciousness. The problem that we are confronted with consciousness is the same problem that we have with anything that either emerges or is transmitted by our brains. Not to upset the people who think that consciousness is something outside of the brain, and the brain is rather like a receiver, like a radio. But any brain stuff has the complication of the fact that the brain is constantly tricking itself in order to function properly, or in order to function properly as far as we can see, in order to save energy and time. The brain will take shortcuts. Like, for example, if you scan around the room with your eyes like this, you have an illusion of being able to scan the room, and you have a nice smooth picture. Correct? Wrong. You don't. That's an illusion. In actual fact, your eyes skip from one place to another, and every time they skip, you go blind for a millisecond. They're called saccades. And when you go blind, that would be disastrous, because you would be, able to be killed by a predator or whatever. So that would be a ridiculous idea. And so the brain patches over the millisecond of blindness, the saccade, and patches it onto the last movement, or the last place the eyes were, and feeds you the illusion that the movement is nice and smooth. It's not a nice smooth movement. And there are plenty of examples of this kind of thing. Optical illusions. If you take a playing card, for example, and hold it at arm's length, just to the left of you, but look straight ahead, right? Don't look at the playing card beforehand, and then hold it there, and then try and not look at it, fix your eyes straight ahead, and then try and guess what card it is. You'll find you can't. Or take a book, look at the first letter of the sentence, and try and guess the last letter of the sentence, and don't move your eyes. And you'll find it extremely difficult, because again, your vision is such that the center point is very sharp and everything peripheral of the center point, and that's not very much, it's like a really small space. It's like, I think it's about the size of a thumb. Everything else is blurred. But your eyes constantly move around, saccades, and give you the illusion that everything is sharp. It's not. So everything that comes from the brain is automatically not trustworthy, because the brain is constantly processing the picture. We're talking about vision now. That's coming in and turning it into something that is useful for you, even if it isn't real. Like colours aren't real, for example. Or you're seeing light and dark, straight lines and curves and movement and so on, all separately in the brain, and they're being tacked together to create the illusion of one picture. So none of what you see, at least, is trustworthy. Consciousness then could be a similar thing, says Dennett. Rather like a picture hanging in a gallery where when you stand far away from it you see a landscape of a city and a bridge, and on the bridge you can actually discern people walking across the bridge, and the closer you get, the more detailed it becomes, and then you get closer and closer and closer until you get so close that you realise you can't see the people at all. They're just dots of colour, just little splodges of colour, and then you go away and they look like people. It's like the closer you get, the less real it becomes. And he says it's a similar thing with consciousness, it's an emergent property, and if you were to go and look for it in the neuronal connections, in the brain, the closer you look, the less like consciousness it would look. It would disappear as you look for it, like the infamous bluebirds that as soon as you grab them and hold them in your hands, they become plain, ordinary brown birds. So consciousness could well be a trick of the mind, the brain taping bits of its information, memories and so on together to give you the illusion of a constant awareness. So if you think about this moment, for example, you're now consciously focusing on this moment, and that's why this moment now seems to be a continuum of consciousness, of awareness. But are you conscious of that woodpecker? That's been doing that the whole time, but were you aware of it? It's only until you sort of focus your consciousness in onto one point, your awareness in, that point, that sensory information becomes apparent. Up until that point, it was not apparent. It didn't exist for you. You were not conscious of it. And so consciousness seems to be, or could be, a thing that we focus, and your brain pieces together all of the rest of the information and tells you, actually, I know, I was aware of that the whole time, I was hearing that. Or, yeah, I remember yesterday. Or, I remember 2 minutes ago. But that could be just as much an illusion as the lack of blindness that you have in your eyes when you scan your eyes around. The smooth picture that you see that isn't actually there. So consciousness could be, in the same way, a kind of cognitive illusion, making you believe that you are living a continuum and constantly aware of the continuum that you're living, but in actual fact you're only living in moments of awareness, that your brain pieces together into the lie or the phantom that you consider to be your daily awareness, your moment-to-moment awareness, or indeed your life. See, the thing is, the brain processes and filters everything that goes in before it sends it back to itself to make sense of it. Visual data, auditory data, every kind of perception that we have, it processes and feeds it back to itself to make sense. Always comparing all the time. I've said this in other videos. It's like a machine for comparing. So it compares the known condition with the condition now and projects that into the future. That seems to be how it works, and it does that with all information that it gains from the outside, because the brain has no information. It has only the perceptions through the nerves that go out into the periphery. The brain is effectively stuck in the top of a dark tower, and messengers come along and shove bits of information underneath the door and tell the brain what's going on outside, because the brain has no idea what's going on outside. And it relies on that information, and it tells itself a story of how the outside world appears, smells, sounds, feels, and so on. That's what we do. We're locked inside our brains, if you like, to an extent, walking around in a world that we have no idea how it looks, how it feels. We only have the information from our perceptions that feed back to the brain, which are processed and filtered and changed and adapted so that the brain can make sense of it. And that's the lie that's projected back into the brain and says, this is the way the world is. It's not. It's definitely not. The reality you see is definitely not that. And therefore, why would the sense of the subjective sense of being, of awareness, the constant play of awareness, why would that be anything different? Why would that not also be an illusion created to make it life easy for the brain and for the organism? That would seem to make sense to me. So, just like your optical sense, your consciousness is a extremely well produced and extremely convincing illusion. Just as Einstein said with time, time is an illusion, albeit a very persistent one, or something like that. Consciousness could be an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. Think about that for a second.